Your radio reading service now presents a reading of articles and features from the USA Today for Wednesday, August 26th, 2026. Your reader for this hour is Mary Gilmore. Our first article is Back to School Costs Hit Home for Parents. I'm looking for every sale I can, Utah mom laments. Brandy McGrath usually buys quality, long-lasting school supplies for her 9-year-old son and his teachers, but sharp increases in the cost of folders, pencils, and other products have forced her to cut back and search for cheaper alternatives. It's insane how expensive things have gotten, said McGrath, 48, of Salt Lake City. I'm looking for every sale I can. In Daytona Beach, Florida, Karen Kaiser also was struck by the cost of back-to-school shopping this year. It is crazy, she said, estimating that she and her husband spent way over $100 on just notebooks and loose-leaf paper for their 2 daughters. That's not counting what we had to pay for back-to-school clothes, shoes, and haircuts. The cost of a typical school supply list, including notebooks, paper, pencils, and glue sticks, is nearly $175, almost 8% higher than in 2025. An analysis by the progressive think tanks Groundwork Collaboration and the Century Foundation shows. Some essential items, such as lunch boxes, notebooks, and tissues, cost 20% or more than they did a year ago, the analysis found, pointing in part to the effects of President Donald Trump's tariff agenda, which the Federal Reserve says raised the cost of many products manufactured overseas for American consumers. Over the same period, the cost of electronics such as headphones rose 6.6%, the report found. Meanwhile, the typical lunch items cost 10.9% more than they did in 2025, the analysis said, citing price hikes on everything from blueberries to deli meat. The rising prices come as Americans are already struggling with inflation and high gas prices stemming from the war in Iran, forcing many to take on debt and stretch their meals. A survey by the personal finance company Credit Karma found that 57% of parents are entering the back-to-school season carrying credit card debt, and nearly half plan to pursue new credit to help pay for back-to-school expenses. The USA Today network reporters spoke with families across the country about how the rising cost of school supplies is affecting them. Many said it has worsened their already dire financial situation, forcing them to cut back further, look for donations, and buy the cheapest versions of what their child needs for school. Some had to forego school shopping altogether. There's all sorts of balancing I have to do now, McGrath said. Everything is squeezing us. Companies are raising prices. Major school supply brands have increased their prices in recent months, citing inflation, rising gas prices, and the Trump administration's tariffs. Newell Brands, which owns well-known school supply brands such as Sharpie, Expo, Papermate, and Elmer's Glue, increased prices on consumers to offset more than $170 million in tariff costs. ACCO Brands, which owns school notebook supplier Mead and Five Star, cited costs from tariffs and conflict in the Middle East as headwinds that will lead to higher prices for consumers. We do anticipate having to push through additional cost increases globally, said Thomas Tedford, president and CEO of ACCO Brands, in an earnings call in July. In a statement, White House spokesperson Kush Dancy said, as traffic through the Strait of Hormuz naturalizes, energy prices and thus overall inflation will come down and real wages will rise. President Trump's economic agenda delivered historic working-class prosperity in his first term, and this same agenda is cleaning up Joe Biden's mess to deliver more job, wage, and investment growth. McGrath, who leads her local parent-teacher association, said she compared receipts from 2025 with what she spent this year and was flabbergasted by the difference. I was paying $1 a piece for basic folders last year, and today they were $2.79, she said. As prices for back-to-school products rise, more families are searching for deals or opting for cheaper alternatives, including donations. About 62% of back-to-school shoppers said they probably would be seeking out sales this year, according to an annual report by the personal finance money management company NerdWallet. A quarter of the respondents said they plan to cut back on school-related spending, and 72% said items like clothing, school supplies, and electronics feel noticeably more expensive this year than in 2025. Jenny Craig of Ormond Beach, Florida, said she spent hundreds of dollars more on school supplies for her 3 daughters this year than she did last year. To keep costs down, she tried to save where she could. I said no to the $1.50 folders that are nicer simply because they have a cute cat on it, she said. We got the plain 49-cent folders instead. Others are doing the same. McGrath said she left the notebooks decorated with elaborate prints and brightly colored animals on the shelves, even though they're her son's favorite. He's going to get the cheapest folder I can afford, and we'll put stickers on it because I can't afford the prices for anything fun that anything fun is going for. According to The Country, tens of thousands of parents line up for free backpacks, notebooks, and other supplies for their children. Many groups organizing these fundraisers say they've seen the need for donations rise sharply over the past several years. The Brevard Schools Foundation, which serves children and families in the East Central Florida area, went from giving free backpacks to about 3,100 students in 2023 to supplying them to nearly 5,000 children last year. Families continue to face rising costs for school supplies, while teachers regularly encounter students who arrive without the basic materials they need to learn, Joan Perry, a spokesperson for the foundation, told Florida Today, part of the USA Today network. Americans already under strain. The new school year arrived at a time when families were already struggling to afford everyday expenses. Studies have shown more Americans are dipping into their savings and taking on debt to cover essential payments on housing, food, and rent. In a June survey, 30% of respondents said they used a credit card to pay for essentials in the past 3 months, knowing they may not pay off their bills. Chase Miranda, 36, of Indian Lake, Ohio, said he and his wife have fallen behind on rent and utility payments just to afford groceries, especially after their food stamp benefits were cut in half. Trump/Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program funding in 2025 in a move the White House said would strengthen the program to serve those who need it most. More than 4 million people are estimated to have lost food benefits since the Republican-backed legislation took effect. Miranda, who's unable to work because of chronic pain stemming from scoliosis and bulging discs in his back, said the cuts meant he couldn't buy his 12-year-old son anything new for the upcoming school year. Until we get enough money saved up, he'll use last year's supplies, he said. Consumer prices have spiked for 5 straight years. In that span, prices have risen more than 25%. The inflation crisis began under former President Joe Biden in the waning months of the COVID-19 pandemic. It has persisted through Trump's second term, fed by his campaign of import tariffs and a lengthening war against Iran. Emily Saturn, a parent of 2 in Peoria, Arizona, said the cost of groceries has forced her to consider whether to keep packing her daughter's lunch. It may now be cheaper to pay for lunches provided by the school, she said. Teachers feel the squeeze too. The high prices are also affecting teachers, many of whom must pay out of pocket to supply their classrooms with essential items like tissues, wipes, hand sanitizers, pencils, and paper. Jarrett Peevler of Perryville, Kentucky, said his wife, a third-grade teacher, had to solicit donations online to stock her classroom with supplies. Her school provides its teachers with only a $200 allowance for the year. That's like one tank of gas for my truck, Peevler said, and they expect that to last her all year. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. As teachers struggle to pay for supplies, they're turning to donations and parents to help fill the gaps, though that's often not enough. In Salt Lake City, McGrath hosts fundraisers and collects supplies for her son's elementary school. This year, she has brought in about a third of the donations she usually receives. As parents and teachers alike struggle to keep up with their costs, schools may cancel some of their field trips, McGrath said. Some supply closets stocked with clothes and notebooks for students in need may be emptier than usual. It's hurting everyone, she said. Elections swiveling on data centers. Public backlash has leaders changing tune. Populist opinion to data centers fueling the boom in artificial intelligence is scrambling up the 2026 midterms, cutting across ideological lines. Americans from urban cores to rural outskirts are objecting to the facilities which house the servers and network equipment used for AI and other digital services. A Gallup survey released earlier this year found roughly 71% of adults in the United States oppose building the centers in their area, and barely 1/4 favored the projects. That has spurred a noticeable pivot from elected leaders. Chief among them is Texas Governor Greg Abbott, a Republican who issued new directives ending certain tax incentives, curtailing water and energy consumption, and releasing guidelines tech companies must follow to help lower electricity costs. The order will temporarily halt about 1,800 data center projects in Texas. I established guidelines and guardrails to protect Texas communities, Abbott said in a post on X in August. These guidelines are now the universally applied standard in Texas. Abbott's shift came less than a year after the governor, 68, faces re-election this year. Abbott's shift came less than a year after the governor, 68, faces re-election this year. Praised Google for a $40 billion data center investment in the state. He said it would make the Lone Star State an epicenter of AI development. The change in tone also coincided with Democratic gubernatorial candidate Gina Hinojosa pounding Abbott for letting tech companies into the state with little oversight. I'm calling on Greg Abbott to issue a moratorium on any new data centers with an emergency executive order to do so, Hinojosa, a state lawmaker, said in a virtual news conference in July. He has the sole power to do it, she added. That moratorium should stand until the legislature can convene and make sure any data center being built is done by American Union labor that is licensed. We also want local control over the work. Across the United States, opponents of data centers have expressed fury at local public officials about the strain on water and electricity resources, but also the disruption to communities because of noise and pollution. Polling by Gallup found the effect on resources was the leading reason for opposition, with 50% of the respondents mentioning environmental concerns. Opposition also cuts across every major demographic, including party affiliation, the survey found. But with Democrats at 56% strongly opposed versus Republicans at 39%, independent voters' opposition sat at 48%, Gallup found. That has spurred a sprint by Democratic and Republican candidates running this year who appear to be recalibrating their positions on data centers as states and local governments rush to come up with new rules and regulations. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 15 minutes after the hour. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, a rumored 2028 presidential hopeful on the Democratic side, signed an executive order August 18th requiring local approval before any state grants are awarded to data center developers. In May, he had cast the telecommunication facility as a major economic project that would lead on innovation. I'm putting these developers on notice and letting them know that we will not let them bully Pennsylvanians, disregard our constitutional right to clean air and pure water, and drive up our utility bills, Shapiro said in a post on X. In the Wisconsin race for governor between Democratic David Crowley and Republican Tom Tiffany, both are looking to leverage the controversial construction boom against their opponent. Tiffany blitzed the contest with seven figures worth of ads describing his rival as data center Dave Crowley, hoping to build a wedge. In the Democratic primary, Crowley's foe, State Representative Francesca Hong, a Democratic socialist, was the only candidate who called for a moratorium on construction of the new data center in the Badger State. In response to the Republican attacks, Crowley has spotlighted Tiffany's voting record in Congress that sought to make it easier to build projects like data centers. The two oppose statewide moratoriums, but both say they want stricter regulations on such developments moving forward. The populist tidal wave over data centers has yet to reach the shores of the White House, where President Donald Trump defended their construction as a cash cow for states that embrace them. All of this income and other benefits will be going to red states and some blue where data centers are sought as cash cows, with lower taxes and record-setting jobs, Trump wrote in a Truth Social post July 15th. Trump's sentiment echoed the feelings of industry leaders who tout the technology's revolutionary capabilities they argue will power growth. Among those who support fueling AI with these facilities, about 2/3 cite the local economic benefit, according to the Gallup survey. But the president's support for the data centers is at odds with the advice GOP candidates seeking election this year are being given. In a memo August 18th, the National Republican Senatorial Committee, the campaign arm of the GOP contenders, noted that the data center backlash is hurting incumbent Senator Jon Husted of Ohio in his closely watched bid against former Senator Sherrod Brown. More than any other thing in this race, data centers are the anchor hanging around Huston's neck, the memo said. If he loses and data centers get the blame, politicians across the country will take notice, and they will not go near the next one. The memo dropped almost 2 weeks after Brown, who once applauded an Amazon data center, released a 30-second spot claiming Husted forced the facilities in Ohio, which is home to more than 200 existing or in development data centers, according to Data Center Map. As Lieutenant Governor, Husted championed data center projects and called Ohio the tech capital of the Midwest. Now he contends data centers should be a local decision and introduce federal legislation that aims to ensure companies pay for the facility's electricity. Republican strategists in the memo said data centers have become an effective messaging strategy for Democrats. Campaigns or party committees cannot fix the toxic brand of an entire segment of the economy, the memo said. The companies that need these projects built have to fix how Ohioans see them, who benefits, who pays, and why a community should want one. Until that happens, the issue will continue to dominate the race. 2 weeks with no power feels like end times in Gary, Indiana. After massive storms ripped through the northwest Indiana and knocked out power on August 11th, Latasha Montgomery assumed she and more than 370,000 people in the area would soon have electricity restored. Nearly 2 weeks later, Montgomery and thousands of other Indiana residents are still living in the dark. Now it's been 12 days. I don't even know how to really grasp that, said Montgomery, who lives with her 3 children in a home on Gary's east side. It really feels like the end times. Families lost hundreds of dollars in spoiled food after refrigerator temperatures rose. Some tried to salvage deep freezers full of food to no avail. People started washing their laundry by hand. Schools closed, forcing working parents to send their children to live with relatives who could care for them during the day. Massive storms began battering northwest Indiana on August 11th. 2 tornadoes ripped through the region, and 100-mile-an-hour winds turned the trees into battering rams. Damage to the electric grid was catastrophic. More than 60% of northern Indiana's public service company, NIPSCO, customers lost power. Some towns have flickered back to life since the widespread outages, but NIPSCO estimates that it will not have widespread power to Gary and Portage, a neighboring city of nearly 40,000 people, until late August 25th. In the meantime, Gary has taken on a post-apocalyptic atmosphere. Massive trees, broken branches from the storm still litter the sidewalks. Tank-like trucks full of utility crews crawl the streets. With traffic lights dark, vehicles haphazardly make turns at busy intersections. Some blame Mother Nature for the longest outage they have ever endured. Others, including Governor Mike Braun, have taken aim at the utility company. The utility, the governor said, continues to fail Hoosiers despite having access to every state resource available. It is time that NIPSCO gets the power back on now, Braun said in a statement to Indy Star, part of USA Today's network, on August 23rd. Gary, once a bustling Chicago suburb full of steel and refinery workers, was carved up and hollowed out as manufacturing moved overseas in the 1970s. A third of the city's 67,000 residents now live in poverty. Gary's mayor is adamant the city is on the rebound. Then the storm hit. Generators, or lack thereof, now divide Gary residents into those able to meet their basic needs and those who say life is becoming unbearable. Timothy Holmes said he had no choice but to get a generator despite the machine's daily appetite for $30 to $50 of gasoline. Without his personal power system, he wouldn't be able to keep his pacemaker online. For his neighbors who can't afford a generator, life is bleak. We live like cavemen, said Fantasia Malone, who lives on Arizona Street with her 3 children. It's like the apocalypse. The storm wreaked havoc on the property Malone rents. Water leaked through the ceiling and debris tore through her backyard, where she now refuses to let her children play. The first few days without power stripped some Gary residents of all sense of normalcy and brought the challenges they never before anticipated. When the outage hit, everyone that was open only accept cash, Montgomery said. I don't carry any cash at all. Went to ATM, it was out as well. I had no assets. Then Montgomery's refrigerator grew warm. She had been driving 30 minutes into Illinois to find ice and groceries. Sometimes she'd feed her family fast food or restaurant meals, but the costs were adding up. I'm afraid to check my bank account, she said, but I have no choice. It's either that or starve. Some Gary parents scrambled to find accommodations for their children after powerless schools shut down. Destiny and Kevin Jenkins, who both work at UPS, sent their 4 children to live with their grandmother in Chicago. In another part of the city, Jackie Taylor said her daughter's school just got power back on August 22nd after canceling classes last week. By the morning of August 24th, the majority of Gary's schools were expected to be open. Most of the schools are up, Gary Mayor Eddie Melton told Indy Star on the afternoon of August 23rd. We have maybe 3 or 4 elementary schools that NIPSCO is working on. Some residents say they are making do by charging their phones in their cars, keeping their front doors open to let the breeze in, and filling coolers with ice. Others are at their wits' end. Donna Tucker, who can't afford a generator, said she's down to her last $13 until September 3rd, when her next benefits payment arrives. I'm a senior citizen on Social Security income, she said. Who is going to give me my food back? The trees that took down the power lines, plunging the area into darkness, are still everywhere in Gary. They're still blocking sidewalks, lying on roofs, and tangling power lines. Some residents say they understand why the Herculean task of cleanup is taking so long. Others, however, say NIPSCO has neglected the area, many parts of which are low income. The utility has restored service for 357,953 customers since the outage began on August 11th, according to the NIPSCO website. But 16,476 remain without power as of 4 p.m. on August 23rd. A NIPSCO spokesperson told Indy Star that restoration plans are dictated by severity and extent of the damage. In some areas, repairs to major transmission and distribution infrastructure must be completed before the work can begin on smaller sections of the system serving individual neighborhoods. Every community matters to us, and restoration priorities are based on system needs, safety considerations, and the work required to restore service to the greatest number of customers as efficiently as possible. The utility has mobilized all available resources since the onset of the storm, including our own crews, mutual and aid personnel, qualified contractors, affiliated employees, and support from the Indiana National Guard and the law enforcement, the spokesperson continued. Braun, however, takes credit for many of the resources restoring life in Gary. He sent 71 National Guardsmen and teams from multiple state agencies last week to clean routes of fallen trees. Several residents told Indy Star they don't believe NIPSCO was prepared for the storm. They pointed to the mess of trees toppling power lines throughout the city as evidence. Melton said that the city of Gary has long known there's a backlog of trees in need of vegetation management, but does not have the resources to address the problem alone. We were asking NIPSCO to give us what their canvas is on vegetation management so we can better understand how frequent should it be more often, Melton said. The mayor himself has been living without power for nearly 2 weeks. 2 die in Pennsylvania as measles comeback continues. At least 2 people have died of measles in Pennsylvania, the state's health department said, adding that both were unvaccinated. The measles deaths were the first in Pennsylvania in 35 years, the State Department of Health said in a news release August 25th, and the first such deaths in the United States this year, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention data. Because measles were largely eliminated in the Commonwealth for more than 3 decades, people are not familiar with this disease and don't fully understand the potential severity of the illness, Pennsylvania Secretary of Health Dr. Deborah Bogan said in a statement. As a physician, I want to make sure that people understand that the MMR vaccine is safe and provides the best protection we have against measles. Both patients lived in Lancaster County, the health department said, adding that it would not identify them to protect their and their families' privacy. Authorities have confirmed 393 cases of the measles in Pennsylvania in 2026, according to the news release. What is measles and how do you get it? Measles is a highly contagious virus that can cause severe short and long-term health problems. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 30 minutes past the hour. It includes pneumonia and brain swelling. Nearly 20% of people who contract measles end up in the hospital. Though measles-related deaths are rare, they are not uncommon, occurring in 1 to 3 patients per 1,000 cases, according to Pennsylvania health authorities. The best protection against measles is getting fully vaccinated, the state health department said. The MMR vaccine, administered over 2 doses, bursts a person's immune system and provides 97% lifetime protection. The measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine is usually given in 2 doses around ages 1 to 5. The CDC also notes that adults and teens should also be up to date on MMR vaccines. Is the MMR vaccine safe? Medical experts long have said the vaccine is safe and effective. For decades, the vaccine has been administered to millions of children, helping prevent severe and life-threatening complications of measles, mumps, and rubella. Serious side effects of vaccines, including seizures, are very rare. The vaccine has been available in its current form since 1971, marking more than 50 years of safe and effective use. It has also been instrumental in curtailing the spread of measles, which before the vaccine's introduction in 1963 sickened an estimated 3 million to 4 million people in the United States every year and caused 500 deaths and 48,000 hospitalizations. Measles cases reach high record. Measles cases in the United States have surpassed last year's total and are at their highest since the disease was eliminated from the country nearly 3 decades ago, according to CDC data. The majority, 93%, occurred in unvaccinated people, and nearly 69% of the cases were in people ages 19 and younger. Cases reached a 30-year high in 2025, with 2,289 confirmed infections across 43 states and the District of Columbia. Nearly 90% of the cases were directly linked to 48 known outbreaks, and 93% of infections were contracted by unvaccinated people or those whose vaccination status was unknown. 3 people, including 2 children, died as a result of the outbreaks, the first pediatric measles deaths in decades. Dr. Mehmet Oz contradicts Trump's claims on vaccine. President Donald Trump, meanwhile, signed an executive order August 10th calling for more vaccine flexibility, fewer childhood vaccines, and splitting the combined childhood measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine into 3 shots at different times. The order also says all childhood vaccines should be spaced out, with each one administered in a separate doctor's office visit to the maximum extent feasible. Announcing the order, Trump said the mRNA vaccine could be quite lethal. Experts, however, say the vaccine is safer and effective. The vaccine is safe and effective, and research indicates dividing it into multiple shots has no health benefit. Dr. Mehmet Oz, head of the Centers for Medicine Medicare and Medicaid services continued or contradicted Trump's statement about the MMR shot in an interview August 23rd on CBC's Face the Nation, saying it is not a lethal vaccine. We're going to move on to the money section of the USA Today, and we're going to do 50 states. And the highlighted state today is Kentucky. Williamstown, a replica of Noah's Ark, 510 feet long and more than 5 stories high, has drawn millions of people to rural northern Kentucky for the past decade. It has become like the Disneyland of religious tourism in the region, minus the major rides. The roughly $100 million attraction celebrated its 10-year anniversary this summer with guest speakers and a concert series, but it also hit 2 other milestones: the loss of its multi-million-dollar tourism tax breaks and the lowest ticket sales reported since it's opened, excluding 2020. Alabama, Gadsden. Gadsden State Community College and the city broke ground on a new 10-court tennis center at the Gadsden Sports Park. The latest project is an ongoing partnership to expand athletic and recreational facilities in the city. Alaska, Juneau. The Juneau Assembly recently voted to sell City Hall to the Sealaska Heritage Institute for $1.5 million, clearing the way for the nonprofit to demolish the building and develop a proposed $40 million arts and cultural tourism complex in downtown Juneau, KTOO reported. Arizona, Coconino County. After 4 years of planning, engineering, and community review, the Havasupai tribe broke ground July 31st for construction of a long-awaited and long-needed broadband system that will bring the West's most remote tribal community closer to the world. Arkansas, Fort Smith. The University of Arkansas Fort Smith will open its new Center for Book Arts this fall, creating a space that the students and the community members can explore traditional bookmarking techniques through the hands-on instruction, workshops, and exhibits. California, Sacramento. California announced that it will implement the nation's first energy-efficient standards for replacement tires. Colorado, Fort Collins. A young black bear found itself wandering the Colorado State University campus as about 6,000 students moved in dormitories on August 18th. Colorado Parks and Wildlife spokesperson Kara Van Hoos said the bear caused no known conflicts but was safely tranquilized and relocated. Colorado, Fort Collins. I just read that one. Connecticut, New London County. Connecticut Food Share and United Way of Southeastern Connecticut have signed a 7-year agreement aimed at expanding food assistance efforts across New London County, continuing a partnership that supports local pantries, meal programs, and meal food distribution services. Delaware. Rehoboth Beach. 5 red oak trees in Rehoboth Beach's closed Grove Park infected with a quickly spreading disease must be removed immediately, according to arborists, and 14 more trees there are under evaluation after being flagged as possibly unhealthy. District of Columbia, Washington. Officials said a teenage girl died after first responders pulled her from the Potomac River near the Francis Scott Key Bridge on August 22nd, DC News Now reported. Florida, Tallahassee. The Florida panther is at a recovery crossroads as it appears the population may be shrinking in overall numbers, a trend that, if true, could mean the state animal will face extinction in the foreseeable future. Georgia, Lexington. A federal grant of $25,000 has been awarded to Lexington for repairs to the Beth Salem Church building, the Georgia State Historic Preservation Office said. Hawaii, Honolulu. American Savings Bank, formerly a subsidiary of utility firm Hawaiian Electric, said it has filed for a U.S. initial public offering. Idaho, Boise. The state has received nearly $1 billion in federal funding to help transform rural health care delivery over the next 5 years, KTVB7 reported, and applications are being accepted now for the first wave of funds. Illinois, Chicago. Residential energy company Solrite Energy said it expects to enroll up to 1,000 Illinois households in its virtual power plant program by the year end, as it bets that rising electricity costs will drive demand for home battery systems. Indiana, Indianapolis. Governor Mike Braun is calling for an investigation into Northern Indiana Public Service Company following prolonged power outages still affecting Gary and Portage after storms and flooding earlier in August. Iowa City. The city is investing nearly $2 million to help local organizations improve public access to the arts. The City Council approved a resolution to establish an Iowa City Endowment for the Arts, a self-sustaining funding source for local arts programs. Kansas, Edgerton. The city of Edgerton, El Dorado, and Emporia want to halt citizen-led petitions that, if implemented, would ban data centers of a certain size via ordinance. Louisiana, St. Bernard Parish. The Gulf Coast is preparing for a new generation of container shipping as Louisiana International Terminal nears construction with a federal permit now in hand. Maine, Saco. Leap and Learn held a Kids Summer Fest on August 22nd, featuring an obstacle course and arts and crafts to thank the community for helping keep the daycare open, WMTV reported. Maryland, Hagerstown. The new building sign for the renamed Thomas J. Garner Elementary School was installed on August 19th. The school was recently renamed to honor its late principal, Tom Garner, who died in October 2025. A ribbon cutting for the school will be held on September 3rd, said Marcy Burleson, the school's academic achievement coordinator. Massachusetts, Dartmouth. The University of Massachusetts at Dartmouth School of Law is welcoming its largest incoming class ever, with 148 students beginning their legal education ahead of the 2026-27 academic year. The record-setting class follows an admission cycle that attracted more than 1,500 applicants, a 45% increase over 3 years, according to a community announcement. Michigan, Lansing. When Michigan public school students return to the classroom this year, they can head to their school cafeteria and have breakfast and lunch for free. A program Michigan started funding in 2023-24 school year is returning for the 2026-27 school year. The state's education budget, signed into law in July, includes $200 million to continue free school meals for 1.4 million public school students. Minnesota, St. Paul. A federal judge dismissed a lawsuit brought by nursing home industry leaders seeking to dissolve the state's Nursing Home Labor Standards Board, which the legislature created in 2023 to set minimum wages and employment standards, Minnesota Reformer reported. Mississippi, Jackson. A month-long labor dispute that disgruntled Jackson's public transit system has ended after JTran drivers and MV Transportation reached and ratified a new contract agreement, city officials announced. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 45 minutes past the hour. Missouri, Springfield. Ozarks Food Harvest distributed 23 million meals across southwest Missouri during its most recent fiscal year, supporting children, families, and seniors through a network of faith-based and community organizations. The food bank expanded several hunger relief programs between July 2025 and June 2026, according to a community announcement. Montana, Helena. Prickly Pear Land Trust announced the permanent protection of 198 acres at War Eagle Hill near Fort Harrison through a partnership with the Montana National Guard and Double L Family Land, preserving wildlife habitat, public hunting access, and open space around the military base, the Daily Montanian reported. Nebraska, Lincoln. The University of Nebraska Foundation announced a record $532.8 million in new funds committed to the University of Nebraska, KOLN reported. Nevada, Las Vegas. The Nevada Transportation Authority approved applications by Tesla, Waymo, and Uber subsidiary Avari to operate as autonomous vehicle network companies in the state. New Hampshire, Hampton. Police are investigating a scam that swindled an elderly couple out of their home and savings in an elaborate scheme known as Publishers Clearinghouse scam. New Jersey, Trenton. More New Jersey private sector workers will have access to a state-run retirement program designed to ensure that people can save for their golden years. Starting in September, program eligibility will expand to businesses that have 10 or more employees and have been in operation for at least 2 years and do not already have a retirement plan. New Mexico, Santa Fe. Summer sales have spelled big money for New Mexico's cannabis industry. As of June 2026, the state has officially surpassed $2.35 billion in cannabis sales, more than $1.7 billion in adult use recreational sales, and nearly $643 million in medical sales, according to the New Mexico Relations and Licensing Department's Cannabis Reporting online portal. The latest numbers represent a boost of almost $150 million since March. New York, Albany. Several Republican lawmakers in New York are pushing to restore funding for New York's crime victim assistance centers, as they're expected to take a funding hit in the coming months. Senate Republicans sent a letter to Governor Kathy Hochul asking for increased funding for the impacted rape crisis centers, domestic violence centers, and child advocacy centers, as well as to provide them with a more stable and predictable funding stream. North Carolina, Pender County. 7 of Pender County's 16 public schools are over capacity going into the 2026-27 school year. While relief is on the way in the form of 2 new schools opening, data shows that it won't be long before growth is again straining the school system. North Dakota, Bismarck. Senator John Hoeven said North Dakota's Theodore Roosevelt National Park wild horses are not affected by reports that some Bureau of Land Management horses have entered the slaughter pipeline, citing the herd's separate protections, KFYR reported. Ohio, Columbus. Chronically struggling public schools could be converted into charter schools, have their leadership replaced, or be forced to close, according to proposed changes Ohio wants federal education officials to approve. The proposal lists 16 ways to improve the state's lowest performing schools, which include high schools where at least a third of students do not graduate. The Ohio school leaders worry the changes go too far and weren't properly vetted. Oklahoma City. 4 people were taken to area hospitals after a school bus carrying Mustang High School students from the Canadian Valley Technology Center and another vehicle crashed west on the Oklahoma City Metro on August 24th. Oregon, Salem. A deep drawdown of the Detroit Reservoir would risk causing catastrophic damage to Salem water filtration systems and endanger the drinking water supply for its 220,000 residents, attorneys for the city wrote in a request for a preliminary injunction filed in federal court. Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh. An 18-year-old in Pennsylvania is accused of stabbing his girlfriend to death, and his mother is accused of helping him cover it up, according to investigators in criminal complaints against the pair. Rhode Island, Providence. A drought watch, as expected, will remain in place in Rhode Island for another month, despite record-breaking rainfall in July and continued precipitation in August. Groundwater resources still aren't back to levels that would support lifting the watch designation, members of the state committee said. South Carolina, Greenville. Students at Greenville County Schools outperformed the state in South Carolina Ready End of the Course and Career Ready assessments in the 2025-26 academic year. South Dakota, Pierre. A South Dakota Health Department official told lawmakers that the number of medical marijuana patients in the state who are licensed to grow medical cannabis at home has grown by more than 1,000% over the past 4 years, South Dakota Searchlight reported. Tennessee, Nashville. Anheuser-Busch InBev sued the state of Tennessee and its Commissioner of Revenue, David Girigano, claiming the state officials wrongfully denied the company a $1.8 million tax refund. Texas, Dallas. A laptop caught fire on an American Airlines flight on August 21st, with one passenger treated after the plane landed in Dallas-Fort Worth. Utah, Cedar City. Southern Utah University has been selected by NASA to lead Utah's new statewide aerospace skilled technical workforce hub, connecting schools, colleges, and industry partners to expand career pathways and help build the state's future aerospace workforce, KSL reported. Vermont, Montpelier. Vermont fifth graders will again have the opportunity to elect a kid governor during the 2026-27 school year as the state continues the civic education program introduced last year. Virginia, Arlington. For more than a century and a half, the teenage soldier lay buried and forgotten on a Virginia battlefield. This fall, The unidentified Union soldier will receive the honor he never got in life, a military burial at Arlington National Cemetery. Research believe he was only 16 to 19 years old when he fought and died during the Second Battle of Manassas in 1862, one of the Civil War's bloodiest struggles. Washington, Kitsap County. The Kitsap Public Health District issued advisories warning residents to avoid all contact with Way Lake and Panther Lake due to the presence of potentially toxic cyanobacteria. West Virginia, Mill Creek. Valley Health Care recently celebrated the grand opening of its new Mill Creek Health Center, a renovated and expanded facility that more than doubles its clinical space and is expected to improve access to primary, specialty, and behavioral health services in the rural Randolph County, WDTV reported. Wisconsin, Waukesha. Gas engine manufacturer INEO plans to invest more than $300 million in its Waukesha factory and to create more than 500 jobs in the coming years, in part due to the increased business with data centers. Washington, Laramie. The city of Laramie's new bike path held its grand opening on August 22nd. Wi-Fi reported. The park includes beginner, intermediate, and advanced mountain bike features, according to the news outlet. General Motors is looking beyond its core vehicle sales for big revenue in the future, and Wall Street analysts applaud the strategy, hinting the automaker may be better positioned than its rival Ford Motor to win government contracts. CEO Mary Barra told Wall Street during a second quarter earnings call on July 21st that GM Defense and GM Insurance are on the road to become meaningful contributors to the company's profit stream. She revealed that if Congress appropriates the funds, the company stands to win a $1 billion contract to build military vehicles off the Chevrolet Colorado frame. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the USA Today for Wednesday, August 26th, 2026 on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your reader for this hour has been Mary Gilmore.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have History Magazine from our friends at Mind's Eye. At 2 o'clock is episode number 2 of We the Women by Nora O'Donnell. And at 3 o'clock is New York Magazine. Stay with us.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's issue of the USA Today. Your reader for this hour is Nancy. So we've got Section B, which is life. De Niro speaks out, from whisper to a shout, from Patrick Ryan. Robert De Niro is the king of the crime thriller. The two-time Oscar-winning legend has starred in most of the most endearing movies of the past 50 or so years, from gritty New York dramas, Mean Streets, and Taxi Driver, to masterful mob epics, Goodfellas, Casino, and The Godfather Part 2. Now the Heat actor is back in action with Netflix's The Whisper Man, streaming August 28th, a spine-chilling adaptation of Alex North's 2019 mystery novel. Directed by James Ashcroft, the movie follows a recently widowed crime writer named Tom Kennedy, played by Adam Scott, whose young son Jake, played by Axton Luca Porto, is abducted. Tom calls on his estranged father, Pete De Niro, a retired police detective, for help, and they soon uncover an eerie link to a convicted serial killer known as the Whisper Man. The film, which also stars Michelle Monaghan and Michael Keaton, taps into primal fears of the unknown and danger lurking in our own backyards. The randomness of such crimes is the thing that's so scary, especially today, says De Niro, seated with USA Today at a Central Park hotel on a recent afternoon. I mean, when I was a kid, you were always worried about the same things, but it seemed to be less intense in the 40s and early 50s. De Niro, age 83, has a full plate with the upcoming comedy sequel, Focker-in-Law, in theaters November 25th, co-starring Ariana Grande, whom he raves is terrific and very professional. The father of 7 also is busy at home with his 3-year-old daughter, Gia, with partner Tiffany Chen. He tells us what he's been watching, his hopes for the years ahead, and much more. This conversation has been edited and condensed for clarity and length. Question: You've starred in many crime dramas through the years. What set this one apart? Answer: When I read the script, I liked the fact that there was this family drama going on between the father and the estranged son, and then the thriller aspects sort of rolled into each other. That was good. It's just an interesting movie. I met James. I liked him, and that was it. I said, I'm in. You and Michael Keaton were both in Quentin Tarantino's Jackie Brown, although you didn't actually share scenes together. What was it like to finally get to act alongside him in this? It was good. He was perfect for it. I don't even know how it came about, but I was very happy that he was doing it. Between this film, The Irishman, and Killers of the Flower Moon, you've been doing some of your very best work in recent years. Aside from the obvious, a good script, good cast, good director, what has changed about how you pick projects now? Especially as you get older, I have less time to waste, so I have to be very careful. I have to juggle between family time, doing a project, where it'll be, and how much time it'll be. Then I'm able to commit to it fully, yet still be present with all my other obligations, especially family. Has Martin Scorsese floated any ideas of potential films you could reunite on? I hope so, but I don't know. I have other projects that I'm working on with people that are substantial, but I don't know when they'll be done. I imagine probably not before the new year. You just celebrated your birthday. What are you most hopeful for in the next year? Personally, professionally, or even just for the world in general? I don't even use the word hope anymore with President Trump's administration. They have to be gotten out. They are stupid for following him because they ought to know better. The rest of his gang. We can't have them in office anymore. It can't be. He's just going to destroy not only the country, but other parts of the world. It's insane. That's a big concern of mine, and I think a lot of people now. When he shares an AI-generated video saying that you and other celebrities have derangement syndrome, do you pay attention? Or do you not even want to give it oxygen? Trump derangement syndrome is because he's given it to you for a reason. People resent deeply what he's been doing. There are some of that follow him, under any conditions. Whatever their reasons are, I don't know. It's a cult, I guess, in some ways. The thing that always amazes me is that if he had just been a decent person and tried to do the right thing, we wouldn't be in this situation. But he's not, and I think a lot of it happened from Trump hosting The Apprentice. Kids are looking at it in their mid-teens, and then they're eligible to vote later, and they vote with a family. I think that part of the country watching The Apprentice had a tremendous influence. I could be wrong on why he got elected. It's crazy. Editor's note. In a statement to USA Today, White House spokesman Davis Singh referred to De Niro as a washed-up has-been who hasn't been relevant in 30 years, suggesting the actor should seek immediate treatment for a debilitating case of Trump derangement syndrome that has completely rotted his peanut-sized brain. Your youngest daughter is still quite little. But is there a film of yours that you're most excited to show her when she gets a bit older? My older kids now, I used to joke and threaten to show them Cape Fear if they misbehave, he laughs. No, there's a couple of films she could see. Fokker is coming out on Thanksgiving, and then there's The War with Grandpa and Meet the Parents. I read that your teenage daughter, Helen, is a big fan of Outer Banks, and that you watch it with her. Is there another film or TV show that she's put you on it to? Well, I used to walk by when she was watching Outer Banks. Then there was the Netflix one. It's kind of sci-fi. What is it? They're doing a big play of it off on Broadway. Stranger Things. Yeah, I was in the kitchen when she was watching it, and I said, "This is interesting." So I watched that, and then we went to see the play. That was really good. And then more recently, she was watching Modern Family. The old episodes, like 10 years old, and they were terrific. So I started watching those with her. Movies. Tony sheds light on Bourdain's dark side. Spoiler alert, we're discussing minor details about the plot of the Anthony Bourdain biopic Tony. Stop reading if you haven't seen the movie yet and don't want to know what happens. To many, Anthony Bourdain is the patron saint of the culinary underground. Through his TV series No Reservations and Parts Unknown, the celebrity chef thoughtfully introduced viewers to diverse cultures and cuisines, all with his trademark curiosity and disarming wit. But his gregarious public persona masked a quietly tortured man who struggled with depression and substance abuse for decades and died by suicide in 2018 at age 61. A new film seeks to reckon with some of his sharper edges. Tony, in theaters now, follows a college-age Bourdain, played by Dominic Sessa, as he runs off to Provincetown, Massachusetts in the mid-1970s. Upon arrival, he begrudgingly takes a summer job as a dishwasher at a seafood restaurant to pay the bills. Directed by Matt Johnson, the movie unflinchingly depicts a Bourdain that none of us ever saw on television. A volatile, often petulant kid who was thrown out of bars for being too drunk and making unwanted overtures toward women. Even at work, he's quick to pick fights with his fellow kitchen staff, and he doesn't think twice about stealing money from his boss, played by Antonio Banderas. It's a prickly portrayal that aligns with how Bourdain describes himself in his 2000 memoir, Kitchen Confidential, adventures in the culinary underbelly. He doesn't pull any punches about what an angry little he was, says Lou Howe, who co-wrote the screenplay with Todd Bartels. That liberated us to paint a truthful, warts and all portrait of him as a young man. The driving idea was, how did he become the ambassador of empathy? He was known for his kindness, and all these values revere him for. But how did he get from point A to point B? Bourdain's carefree persona, in fact, was a suit of armor. Late in life, he spoke candidly about the emptiness and isolation of constantly being on the road, and in his 2010 memoir, Medium Raw, he wrote that he was aimless and regularly suicidal after the divorce from his wife, Nancy Putkowski, in 2005. With the support of Bourdain's estate, Tony very much imagines him as an irascible lone wolf who shuts himself off from his family and lies to Nancy, played by Amelia Jones, his then love interest. Initially, he shirks his duties at the restaurant, pompously claiming that he's writing a novel and that washing dishes is beneath him. But gradually, he comes to see the fulfillment and community that food can foster. Tony is loosely based on 3 chapters of Kitchen Confidential, but it also pulls from other interviews and books, such as 2021's Bourdain, The Definitive Oral Biography, written by his former assistant, Lori Wolver. In Wolver's book, his ex-wife, Nancy, and several of the chefs who knew him talk about the time in his life when he was a real wayward soul who treated that world like his ashtray. Bartels says, "We posited that maybe in this summer he grew from a selfish person and a narcissist to someone who is deeply interested in other people. Like any biopic, Tony takes liberties with Bourdain's life. The movie fictionally suggests Bourdain was rejected by a Vassar College writing fellowship, which prompted him to run away from home to Provincetown. The film also implies that his scorned underdog spirit was spurred in part by his mother Gladys, played by Tamara Domzek. Tony depicts Gladys as an aloof and tough-to-please matriarch, when in actuality she was her son's biggest champion. Throughout Bourdain's life, a lot of people would say he was effortlessly social and unbothered, Johnson says. What was interesting to me is that his reputation seemed to be a defensive persona he'd created. Yes, he's cool and seems ready for anything, but that must be an answer to something in his childhood, this suit of armor to protect him. Tony captures his romantic view of drugs and alcohol. Tony also doesn't shy away from Dan's addictive behaviors. There are numerous scenes of him drinking alone and snorting cocaine on the job. Johnson was particularly fascinated by the almost Hunter S. Thompson way that Bourdain wrote about his relationship with drugs. In Kitchen Confidential, he finally describes his Provincetown compatriots as pirates who had sex and booze in excess and lived their lives with a carefree disregard for all conventional morality. He writes that they threw themselves into their kitchen chores, but always fueled by marijuana and prodigious amounts of cocaine and amphetamines. For Bourdain, these were tools of the chef's trade, and he loved being one of the guys that could use shrugs to get through a shift. Johnson says, "It felt very clearly like Anthony Bourdain's romantic ideation around drug culture. He looked at those things as admirable and things that he wanted to chase." Bourdain didn't start using heroin until the 1980s when he was working in New York's restaurants. He developed a severe addiction to that and crack cocaine, and he eventually checked himself into rehab in the early 1990s. Although he remained sober from hard drugs for the rest of his life, he never quit alcohol, and one of his Repeated travel mantras was to drink heavily with locals, whenever possible. Through the pleasure-seeking fictional character of fry cook Sal, played by Leo Woodall, Johnson wanted to show the double-edged sword of Bourdain's life, the thrill and camaraderie that partying provides, while also being enormously destructive to one's physical and mental health. It's Leo's character who really expresses the cleanest Bourdainism. You're on this planet once, so you should enjoy the ride, Johnson says. I mean, Bourdain's famous line is, your body is not a temple, it's an amusement park. There is a positive and a negative in that message, which is what the film is trying to get at. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time's 40 minutes after the hour. Music, News, and Views. Parton's cultural impact will live on, from Melissa Ruggieri. Dolly Parton took an adage about perseverance and made it her own. The way I see it, if you want the rainbow, you gotta put up with the rain, she said throughout her career, most notably and recently in a social media post in May. Parton endured the seesaw of rainbows and rain throughout 80 years of an extraordinary life that ended August 25th. Small-town daughter of a farmer and homemaker who cared for a dozen children in a cabin without electricity. Awards and rhinestone-laden superstar with an arsenal of hit records, a string of memorable movies, performances, her own theme park and business empire, and philanthropic passions. Parton was the standard-bearer of a dissipating breed of superstar. Whether it was her music, honest to its core, her sunny disposition, candid observations of sheer adorability, Parton escaped labels and defied political partisanship. It doesn't take much for people to disagree and share those opinions vociferously. But even if you didn't have them, an appetite for Parton's music or appreciate her brand of sassy yeehaw chic, how often did you hear anyone disparaging Dolly Rebecca Parton? She could charm Johnny Carson and David Letterman alike, breakthrough on the Porter Wagoner show in the 60s and 70s, and quietly work as a producer on Buffy the Vampire Slayer in the 90s and aughts. Be a spiritual person who sings about Christian faith and support the LGBTQ plus community with her approval of same-sex marriage. Donate $1 million to COVID-19 vaccine research during the pandemic and still somehow managed in death to broker common ground between President Donald Trump and former President Barack Obama, both of whom shared messages of sympathy upon news of Parton's death. Trump also ordered flags to fly at half-staff through sunset September 1st in Parton's honor. Parton maintained her privacy. There were so many things to admire about Parton: her philanthropy through her Dollywood Foundation and Imagination Library, her unapologetic style and sense of self, her peerless ability to weave a story with keen observational skills and a guitar, her on-screen magnetism in films that never required her to play more than a modified version of herself, whether it was warmth or comedy, because she oozed both. But for much as Parton shared of herself with the public, she kept her private life padlocked. Her nearly 60-year marriage to Carl Dean, who died March 2025, was notable for how much we didn't know about the couple. Photos of the twosome were almost non-existent. When asked about Dean in interviews, Parton usually demurred with a polite, crafted response about his unflagging support. And while Parton did share in a 2003 Rolling Stone profile that after surgery in 1982 for female problems, she was unable to have children, she also shared that the couple's choice to not become parents early in their marriage meant that she could dedicate herself to her career, a notion that is sneered at even today, but never produced backlash for Parton. That same dedication to secrecy, even more impressive in a world where TikToks and tabloids conspire to demolish any celebrity, was employed this last year of Parton's life. The cancellation of her anticipated Las Vegas residency in May, coupled with Parton's sister's wedding out an SOS for prayers, stoked uneasy thoughts. Could Parton's illness be more serious than kidney stones and exhaustion? In some way, we all knew it was, but no one wanted to envision a world without her, so we shoved those thoughts into her next news cycle. But never a word was leaked about her indeed more serious illness, nor her hospital stay in Nashville, where she died after what her team called a brief battle with cancer. Even gossip vultures respected her. Parton was more than a musical role model for young women. It's impossible to canvass the landscape of female country superstars and not notice Parton's fairy dust sprinkled across so many of them. Would Shania Twain and Faith Hill have been accepted by the pop music conglomerate without Parton stepping into the top 10 of the Billboard Hot 100 chart in 1978 with Here You Come Again, then returning with 9 to 5 and her iconic duet with friend Kenny Rogers, Islands in the Stream? With the astute songwriting of Casey Musgraves and Lainey Wilson, both of whom have professed eternal adoration of Parton, flourished without Parton's musical imprint. Would Taylor Swift have witnessed a role model of epic business savvy, a woman who branded cake mixes, cookware, and cosmetics, and who told Elvis Presley to take his blue suede shoes out the door when his team wanted him to record Parton's I Will Always Love You and take half of her publishing royalties? That decision later earned Parton more than $10 million in royalties, according to Forbes, after Whitney Houston broke records with her enduring versions of her ballad. In her comments about Parton's death, Swift praised the icon for her music that thawed even the coldest hearts, but also for her backbone of steel to defend her own self-worth as an artist, and for the tightropes she walked so that young girls like me could grow up dreaming of joining the circus, too. Of course, Swift and her music peers probably would have found their way, even while the paradigm of moxie known as Dolly Parton. But how much sweeter it was that they had a rainbow as their guide. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 50 minutes after the hour. Now for Section C, which is sports. Kickoff. Don't hit snooze. If Indiana could win a national title, why not one of these 4 non-top 10 teams? From Blake Topmeyer. There's no next Indiana. Let's set that straight from the start and frame this conversation properly. To replicate Indiana's outhouse to penthouse rise, a longtime loser like Northwestern would need to ascend to the throne within a couple of years. A more realistic debate would be this: is there a team ranked outside the top 10 in the USLBM coaches poll that could replicate what the 2025 Hoosiers did and go from underrated to national champions? Until Indiana, not since 2013 Florida State, which is preseason number 12, had a team won the championship that wasn't ranked in the preseason top 10. So that's the framework for our exercise. Which team, not the top 10, have the best chance? A long shot, perhaps, but a chance to win the national championship. Here are 4 teams to consider. Number 13, LSU. This is why I say no next Indiana exists, because Lane Kifflin and LSU winning a national championship, the Tigers already have 3 national titles in this millennium, wouldn't be equivalent to Indiana overcoming a doormat's history to win a national championship, 2 years after hiring James Madison's coach. But if we're purely looking at teams outside the top 10 with the goods to chase a ring, LSU must be on the list. Kiffin's portal haul is tremendous, and he has proved he can blend transfers. If quarterback Sam Levitt ignites, LSU can't be ignored. Number 14, Southern Cal. If there was ever a time for Coach Lincoln Riley to break through at USC, this is it. No team returns more starters than the Trojans. And although Dante Moore and Julian Sayin magneticize a lot of the hype surrounding Big Ten quarterbacks, USC's Jaden Miava is a star too. USC's schedule is loaded. It includes Ohio State, Oregon, and Indiana. But Riley should be able to compete with this roster. If he can't, maybe he's not the guy the Trojans thought they were getting. Number 12, Texas Tech. The Brendan Sorsby saga overshadowed that Texas Tech remains the front winner in the Big 12. Conference peers will struggle to score against a defense with a disruptive front and linebacker Ben Roberts in the middle of it all. The schedule's a breeze. Number 24 Houston is the only preseason ranked opponent, so the Red Raiders are a good bet for the college football playoff. What do they achieve if they get there? Last season, they got shut out in a whimpering playoff loss. To be championship contenders, Will Hammond must become a better quarterback than Texas Tech thought he would be. Otherwise, why did it try so hard to make a gambling addict its starter? If Hammond over-delivers, then Texas Tech is underrated. Number 19, Washington. From number 19 to champions? Pretty extreme, right? Well, not for the 2025 Indiana. And here's another Big Ten team lurking on the 19 line with an ace quarterback in Demond Williams Jr. He's got an offensive line full of familiar faces in front of him. There's good reason for skepticism that Washington will ascend past last year's 9-4 record, particularly because it must replace several defensive starters. But the cliche rings true that if you've got a quarterback, you've got a chance, and Washington has a quarterback. College football. Red Raiders top ground and pound units from Craig Meyer. Even as college football offenses increasingly do most of their damage through the air, there's always room for an effective ground-based attack. As any frustrated fan has been liable to say at some point while watching their team on a given fall Saturday, it's never a bad idea to just run the dang ball. A stable and reliable run game is important to the fortunes of any team with even a faint hope of competing for a national championship. A good group of backs and a strong contingent of linemen blocking for them can pick up needed yards in critical moments, control the clock, and, if a unit's really having its way, break the will of an opposing defense. Several stars at the position will be back in college for the 2026 season, a group that includes the likes of Ole Miss's Kuhn Lacey, Missouri's Ahmed Hardy, and Miami's Mark Fletcher Jr., just to name a few. Beyond those individual standouts, though, what teams have the best, deepest groups of runners? The top 10 running back room for the 2026 season. Number 10, Ohio State. While he's no relation to the legendary two-sport star, the Buckeyes have a Bo Jackson of their own, and he's awfully good. The former four-star recruit carried his team on the ground as a freshman last season, rushing for 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns while averaging 6.1 yards per carry. For good measure, he also had 200 receiving yards and a touchdown. Fellow sophomore Isaiah West showed promise in his debut college season, too, rushing for 310 yards and averaging 5.3 yards per carry. And Florida transfer Jacoby Jackson could provide a nice boost if he's able to move on from a disappointing 2025 season with the Gators. Number 9, Southern Cal. As Lincoln Riley enters an all-too-critical 5th season with the Trojans, he'll have an excellent group of backs to try to help propel what should be a high-powered offense. King Miller had a stellar redshirt freshman season in 2025, rushing for 972 yards and 8 touchdowns, and was complemented effectively by Wayman Jordan, who added 576 yards and 5 touchdowns. Together, the pair combined to average 6.3 yards per carry. Number 8, Ole Miss. The Rebels have not only arguably the best player in the country in quarterback Trinidad Chambliss, but potentially the best running back, too. Hewan Lacey had a breakout sophomore season after transferring over from Missouri, with 24 rushing touchdowns, second most in the Football Bowl subdivision, and 1,567 yards, third most. Transfers, Makari Frazier, who rushed for 520 yards last season at Michigan State, and Joshua Dye, who was a football championship subdivision first-team All-American last season at Southern Utah, should provide some nice depth for Ole Miss in Coach Pete Golding's first full season at the helm. Number 7, Florida. John Summerall is taking over a Florida program that has gone just 29-34 over the past 5 seasons, but his first squad in Gainesville will have some productive runners. Jaden Baugh is one of the top returning backs in the country after putting up 1,380 total yards and 10 touchdowns last season. This year he will be joined in the backfield by a pair of big portal gets, Evan Pryor, who ran for 522 yards and averaged 6.9 yards per carry last season at Cincinnati, and London Montgomery, who put up 749 yards and 7 touchdowns last season at East Carolina. Number 6, Miami, from Florida. Mark Fletcher Jr. was one of the catalysts for the Hurricanes' run to the national championship game last season, rushing for 507 yards and averaging 6.8 yards per carry in his team's 4 college football playoffs games. He's back and not alone either, as Miami's number 2 and number 3 rushers from last season are also returning to Coral Gables. Shamar Brown ran for 7 touchdowns in 2025, albeit while averaging 3.9 yards per carry, and Gerard Pringle Jr. could be due for a larger role after scoring 4 touchdowns and averaging 6 yards per carry as a freshman last season. Number 5, Louisville. For all that coach Jeff Brom added in the transfer portal, his biggest move of the offseason may have been holding on to Isaac Brown. Although injuries limited to only 9 games last season, Brown still managed to run for 864 yards on just 101 carries, an average of 8.8 yards per touch. He's one of the big gets home run threat in the sport, too, with 5 of his 7 touchdowns last season going for at least 50 yards. In the games he missed, the Cardinals leaned heavily on another Brown, Kajayan, no relation, a more bruising runner who averaged 7.3 yards per carry and scored 6 touchdowns. Watch out for Marquis Davis, too, a former four-star recruit who averaged 5.9 yards per carry as a freshman at Missouri last season. Number 4, Oregon. The Ducks will be breaking in a new offensive coordinator after Will Stein left to become the head coach at Kentucky. But new play caller Drew Malacher will be inheriting what should be a strong run game. After promising freshman seasons, Jordan Davison and Dare Hill Jr. are back to help out Oregon's Dante Moore-led offense. Davison was the primary back last season, rushing for a team-high 667 yards and 15 touchdowns. And Hill was wildly productive with fewer carries, racking up 656 rushing yards and 8.7 yards per carry, along with 137 receiving yards. While a year of college experience under their respective belts, both players could be primed for big seasons. Number 3, Texas. The Longhorns are believed to have one of the most expensive rosters in the sport. At least a chunk of that change went to building what should be one of the country's best backfields. Rollick Brown will be wearing a burnt orange this season after rushing for 1,141 yards last season at Arizona State. He's not the only prominent newcomer either, with coach Steve Sarkisian pulling in Hollywood Smothers from North Carolina State, where he racked up 1,128 total yards last season. Number 2, Missouri. The Tigers may very well have the best running back in the country in Ahmad Hardy, whose 1,649 rushing yards ranked second among all FBS players last season, to say nothing of his 16 touchdowns and 6.4 yards per carry. Hardy faces some questions over his health and availability heading into the season after he was shot in May. But even beyond him, there's plenty to like about Mizzou's backfield. If Hardy misses any time or doesn't fully recover, the Tigers can lean that much more on Jamal Roberts, who rushed for 753 yards and averaged 6.1 yards per carry as a junior last season. And number 1, Texas Tech. While Texas Tech won't have quarterback Brendan Sorsby to lean on this season, its offense will have what might be the best collection of running backs in the country. The Red Raiders' top 2 rushers from last season's Big 12 championship squad are back, with Cameron Dickey and Jacoby Williams combining for 1,992 yards and 20 touchdowns in 2025. And because it's Texas Tech, there's a high-profile transfer ready to help in Quinlan Joyner, who rushed for 478 yards and averaged 7.6 yards per carry at Southern Cal in 2024 before suffering a season-ending knee injury in preseason camp last year in Lubbock. Gary Woodland proudly fights back to finale. From Adam Shuppick. 7 years ago, Gary Woodland was the reigning U.S. Open champion and a fixture of East Lake Golf Club. This week, he had to use GPS for directions. When a reporter asked him whether he needed help finding the place, Woodland smiled. "I went the wrong way this morning, so yes," he said. The joke was easy. The journey was anything but. 7 years had passed since Woodland finished in the top 30 of the FedEx Cup standings and qualified for the season-ending Tour Championship. A lot had changed in those 7 years, including a redesign of the layout that made the course appear foreign to him. But that's not all that had changed. In September 2023, Woodland, age 42, had surgery to remove a baseball-sized tumor from his brain. Before the operation, he wrote letters to each of his 3 kids in case he didn't make it. Making it to Eastlake, it has been the least of his concerns. He rolled into the parking lot August 24th in his courtesy car after a season that has once seemed almost impossible to imagine. He won the Texas Children's Houston Open in March, recorded 6 top 10 finishes, then delivered a clutch T4 finish Sunday at the BMW Championship to secure a spot in Atlanta. It's something that looked a long ways to start the year, he said. I'm proud of the way I fought. I'm proud to be here. Woodland's battle didn't end when he left the operating room. After the brain surgery came another fight, a silent battle that was harder to explain because it couldn't be seen with an MRI. In March, just weeks before his victory, Woodland revealed he was battling post-traumatic stress disorder. Something remarkable happened when he went public with his latest fight. When it came out that I was having brain surgery, I didn't know how many texts I got. Let's just say I got 100, he said. When I came out that I'm battling PTSD, I got thousands. People could understand the brain surgery from a distance, but they understand his invisible battle because they were fighting their own battles too. Woodland began receiving messages from strangers that were struggling with things they hadn't been able to tell another soul. Some thanked him for being willing to say out loud what they were experiencing themselves. If I can come out and ask for help and talk about it, then they've gotten help too, Woodland said. That led to an important realization. He wasn't playing for himself anymore. Asking for help had been one of the hardest things he'd done. What Woodland discovered on the other side was almost the opposite of what he feared. It's amazing when you ask for help, how many people actually want to help, he said. Woodland traded worries for a win, and here he is. But nothing about his comeback has been neat, where everything is suddenly fine. His best days are tens, and he appreciates them more, but the bad days? Still ones. I struggle sometimes because it's a massive drop now from 10 to 1, he said. So when I get off, it feels like the end of the world. The days I still stuck, he still has to fight. But he no longer has to pretend otherwise. I got a lot of relief from that. I still battle the same things now that I was battling then. But I feel the love and support. I don't feel like I'm hiding anything. Tommy Fleetwood, one of Woodland's fellow competitors and the defending FedEx Cup champion, understands what his season represents. For him to have a great year, he said, it's one of those inspirational stories that I'm sure touches so many people, but also has an impact on a lot of people as well and their individual journeys. Woodland is treating this week as a sentimental victory lap. The Tour Championships format has changed since his last appearance. Good riddance to the former staggered start scoring format in which Scotty Scheffler, the FedEx Cup leader before the reset, would have started at 10 under. And now the player in the 30-man field with the lowest 72-hole score wins. Having continually defied the odds, Woodland likes his choices and chances. You're spotting Scotty 6 or 7 shots. We have a hard enough time not spotting him any shots, Woodland said. I'm shoving up here to win. There's no doubt about it. I'm not as a celebratory tour because I'm finishing top 30. I've been playing with a purpose. That purpose reaches far beyond golf. A few weeks ago, during the FedEx St. Jude Championship in Memphis, Woodland met an 11-year-old from New Zealand with an inoperable brain tumor. From Wednesday through Sunday, he walked every hole with Woodland. I owe it to him, Woodland said. At first, he thought the fight was about him. Now he knows it isn't. This is way bigger than me. I owe it to everyone else that's struggling. There's a lot of days where I don't want to do it, he added. There's a lot of days I don't want to fight. But he does, because that kid who dreamed of becoming a professional athlete is still inside him, because his family sacrificed for that, and because he refuses to let something beyond his control decide how his story ends. 7 years after his last trip to the Tour Championship, Woodland found his way back. This time he didn't have to find the road alone. American men and women vie for open titles. From Scooby Axon. Every year since 2003, the big question entering Grand Slam tournaments is whether an American man will finally win on tennis's biggest stages. When tennis was dominated by Novak Djokovic, Rafael Nadal, and Roger Federer, few American men even reached a Grand Slam final, let alone won one. That's also held true in recent years with Jannik Sinner and Karian Alcatraz, dominating the headlines and the competition. But Sinner is injured and will not compete in New York, while Alcaraz returns to single play after almost a 4-month absence. The year's final Grand Slam is a chance for redemption. In the Americans, as 7 players from the U.S. are ranked in the top 50. Even though Aryna Sabalenka is the 2-time defending women's champion, she has plenty of competition. Not only will Americans such as Coco Gauff, Jessica Pegula, and Amanda Anisimova have a say in that, but the contingent from Czechia, with 7 ranked in the top 50, might also make some noise. Men. Carlos Alcaraz. The defending Open champion is a threat to win any tournament he enters. The problem is he has missed the last 2 Grand Slam events and the entire hardcourt season. But his performance in the mixed doubles tournament with Serena Williams shows he's still a force to be reckoned with, especially if his troublesome wrist can withstand the force of 2 weeks of serves and returns. Ben Shelton. The biggest question is which version of him will show up. The one who blitzed through Montreal or the one who looked tired in Cincinnati and was ousted. In the first round, Shelton and Francis Tiafoe, who got to the final in Cincinnati, may give U.S. men their best chance in a while for ultimate glory. Alexander Zverev. Confidence is a key component, and Zverev has loads of it after his French Open triumph. His improved service game will be the key if he plans on making any noise. Arthur Fils. The 22-year-old from France has been slowly climbing the rankings and will enter knocking on the door of the top 10. His performance in Cincinnati, where he won his first ATP Masters 10,000 title, put the entire tour on notice, and he could be pushing to form a new Big Three with Alcaraz and Sinner, who is injured and won't play. Taylor Fritz. A 2024 U.S. Open finalist, Fritz has the forehand and serve to compete with any of the top players. So if he gets a favorable draw, he can do more than salvage his 2026 season. He hasn't gotten past the 4th round at any Grand Slam this year. Women. Aryna Sabalenka. She hasn't won a Grand Slam event this year. She is hanging on to her number 1 ranking by a thread. Anything less than a deep run, and she could lose her nearly 100 straight weeks run at the top. Elena Rybakina. The woman threatening to snatch the number 1 ranking from Sabalenka already has a hardcourt Grand Slam title this year, having won the Australian Open. The caveat is that she has never advanced past the 4th round at the U.S. Open. Coco Gauff. Golf is due for a championship run in New York. Since winning the title in 2023, she's been beaten in the fourth round in each of the last two tournaments. But strong finishes at the Miami Open and in Toronto have her primed for another strong showing, especially if her forehand and serve cooperate. Iga Swiatek, known more for her clay court prowess, the 2022 U.S. Open champ, beat Rybakina in the Montreal final and couldn't be the favorite to dethrone Sabalenka. The former number one is attempting to keep alive her streak of winning at least one Grand Slam title, which he has done in each of the prior 4 years. You've been listening to a reading of the USA Today for August 28th. We read the USA Today weekdays at noon. For more information, call us at 716-821-5555. Your reader for this hour has been Nancy.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have episode number 8 of A World Appears by Michael Pollan. At 3 o'clock is New York Magazine, and at 4 o'clock is a re-airing of today's Buffalo News. Stay with us. You're listening to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Radio reading serves people who are blind or have a print disability throughout Western New York and Southern Ontario's Niagara Peninsula. From its broadcast studios at 1199 Harlem Road in Cheektowaga, just north of Clinton Street. Almost 40 years and more than 300,000 hours of radio readings to those unable to read printed matter on their own. Our broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. Volunteer radio readers broadcast daily readings of newspapers, magazines, and books. For more information on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, call us at 716-821-5555. You're listening to your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our volunteer radio readers broadcast daily readings 24 hours a day of newspapers, magazines, books, and other printed matter. People who are blind or have a print disability throughout Western New York and Southern Ontario's Niagara Peninsula are provided special reading radios. This year, the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service marks almost 40 years on the air. Our broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. Radio Reading Service studios are at 1199 Harlem Road in Cheektowaga. The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service website is nfradioreading.org. For more information, call us at 716-821-5555.
The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a